All right, good afternoon, everybody. We're just going to give it a couple minutes before we get started.
It's very good thinking music, Dave.
It really is. I wish I had this on every call I was on. I could just kind of veg out.
That's why I got to keep you on camera so that
Yeah.
you can edge out. I think we should get started.
All right, cool. Let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Maximo Application Suite Town Hall. Everything your Magic 8-Ball won't tell you. I'm Rachel Freeman, and I'll be your moderator today. We have just a few housekeeping things to go over before beginning. Today's session will be recorded, and we will send out the link afterwards. Please stay on mute throughout the entire webinar, and if you wish to ask a question, you can post it in the Q&A panel. This session is designed to be interactive, so we encourage you to use this feature and ask any questions you have about the Maximo Application Suite. If we don't get to your question during the session, we'll be sure to follow up with you afterwards. So let's get started. At this point, I'll pass it over to the self-proclaimed Maximo King himself, Ray Michek.
Well, thank you, Rachel, for that. Did you say it was going to be recorded? I'm sorry, I vegged out there for a second. Okay, good. So you've started that recording, and people drop off if they don't want to attend. So thank you, everybody, for joining. I know that we have some people coming over from the mobile suite, Maximo Mobile webinar that took place just before ours. I will say that we planned ours prior to that, but the Maximo Mobile team had to do some shifts, and they ended up doing that on the same day. So welcome if you joined that session. So the other thing I'd like to say is thank you very much to the Project team and the More community for hosting this event. The More platform is an unbelievably rich area or resource for anybody that's involved in Maximo. Whether you have a simple user question or you have use case questions or just want to talk about Maximo, there is something for everyone. If you are not engaged or involved in the community, I encourage you to do so. There's always something to learn. So with that, Rachel, why don't you turn to the next slide, if you will? All right, so our agenda is very simple. We're going to do some brief introductions. It might be simpler now because we're waiting on Kim. Maybe we don't even have to introduce Kim. Dave, you'll have to do that. And then we're going to go through a mass overview, the Maximo Application Suite overview, and then a Q&A session. So the mass piece is where we're going to spend the bulk of our time, obviously, and within that we're going to concentrate on what's called the managed piece or the Maximo piece, though we're going to cover other pieces as well. And this is a hot topic for anybody that has Maximo. It's important to us and our customers in the community that have Maximo where this is going over the next few years. So Rachel, next slide, please. Okay, so when Dave and I and Kim and our team started talking about what kind of event we would have around the Maximo Application Suite, what we came to the conclusion is people have been talking about this next release, Dave, right, for a while. And drips and drabs have come out, and there's been pieces of it. And so one of the purposes that we had was how do we debunk some of the myths and present some key takeaways that customers will at least have a foundation for understanding this for deeper discussions. I think you'd agree, Dave, that this is a pretty heady hefty discussion, one that you can't cover in just an hour, right?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Today's focus is really just to kind of recap and level set where we are today, and to make sure everyone on the line is aware that this is our next release of Maximal. So moving forward, this is our future. I do lots of roadmaps, as you know, Ray, and I get the question all the time, when are we coming out with the Maximo 8? Well, this is it, and it's a pretty significant change.
Right, and so we're going to consider this a primer for the Maximo application suite that sets the groundwork for future discussion. But there's three things that we want you to take away from it. We want you to learn the potential path forward, and we want to compare the new licensing model to the existing licensing model, and then understand new technology, because there's a lot wrapped up in this release. I mean, it's almost akin to going from release 4 to release 5 or release 6 from release 4. Remember that big shift that we had. So there's a lot to take away, and some good stuff in it as well. Go ahead.
Let's not scare everyone away, Ray. It's not quite like 4 to 5 or 6. So we'll cover that as I go through the slides.
Yeah. And so we're going to take this in a little bit different manner. Go back, Rachel. I didn't say change slide yet. Thank you. All right. It's now Rachel's disappeared on the camera. I can't point, or she's just in the background doing these things. So we're going to do a little bit different approach to this and make it more of a town hall meeting, if you will. So we'll go through a presentation of the suite, and then we'll really open it up to questions. And in fact, we wanted to make it more like what you would see if you were attending one of Dave and Kim's sessions at the IoT Exchange or Maximo World. Oh, by the way, Dave, I don't know if you heard. Hey, Kim, you joined us. Thank you very much. All right.
Sorry.
No. It's all good. I'm glad you joined us. We were talking about that this is the Maximo World, and I don't know if you guys heard yet, but Maximo World is on for August. In fact, I talked to the folks at Reliability Web. They've done an outstanding job of trying to coordinate and make this a safe event. The hotel has done some unbelievably good things. Disney's actually well attuned to handle it. So that's exciting. But again, we want questions to be asked. We actually, on the registration side, had people ask questions ahead of time. So that way you guys can be prepared to answer some of those things. So we got, 15, 20 questions that came in upon registration, which was good. But speaking of Maximo World, I did want to show you something. I was cleaning out my closet.
Now,
come on.
That's a classic.
Yeah, if I could only fit into it now, I would be happy, but can't do that. Okay, so, and oh, by the way, there's going to be an event March 24th on Maximo Wednesdays that's going to cover some of the same things that we're talking about today. So again, it's an iterative process. There's a lot to learn, but there's a lot of good things in there too. Now, in regards to questions, I do want to let you know that Kim and Dave and I are equipped with our AI solution and knowledge tool in order to ask your questions. Kim, there you go. Is this event going to be a success? My reply is yes. So I'm not going to tell you what it really is.
Don't count on it. We don't believe it.
Let's do something fun. Next slide, Rachel. All right, well, let's do a poll, and it's how many possible answers are in a standard Magic 8 Ball. We want you to be interactive, so if you guys can click now and put in there, what is your answer?
Most likely.
Yep, most likely. Dave and Kim, you can't participate. You probably already realized that. Okay, Rachel, are we back? Can we bring back have we gotten some responses there?
Yeah, I'll just give it like a couple more seconds.
We don't have our disco music here playing. I just while we're talking, I want you to know that the Magic 8 Ball was formed or invented in 1950 by a guy by the name of Albert Carter. And this is the interesting thing, his mother was a clairvoyant. And it was a failure because they put it in a magic crystal ball, but then Brunswick hired him, Brunswick Billiards, and put it in the Magic 8 Ball, and that's what we have today. So Only 17% of you got the right answer. The correct answer, bring us back if you can, Rachel, is 20. 20 is the correct answer to that. I don't know if you knew that, but there's a little thing in there called the icosahedron, which is a 20-sided cube, 10 positive answers, 5 negative answers, and 5 vague answers. So little trivia for you. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Thank you guys for participating there. I am just pleased as punch to have Dave and Kim join us from the IBM Maximo offering team. We're going to get them to introduce themselves in a little bit, but I will tell you that they are probably the two of the most knowledgeable people when it comes to Maximo on the product itself, the vision and the direction. I can't think of anybody else better. I've had a chance to work with them over 20 years now. It seems just like yesterday. In fact, guys, I was talking to, a couple months ago, I was talking to someone who had a Maximo baby. And what that means is they started in Maximo, had a baby while using, not while using Maximo, but had a baby. And that their son has grown up and is now using Maximo in their job. And that's how long we've been
we
around.
We got a couple of those in the office
together. So
That's
what
a
I'd
great
like
story.
to do is maybe introduce a little bit about yourself and your journey. I would be surprised if there are people that don't know you, but it's important from this foundation level because you guys are so steeped in Maximo culture, and I want people to know a little bit about that background. So Kim, maybe you could start off and tell a little bit about yourself, and then one odd fact that maybe people who know you don't know.
Okay, so I can take a minute and people will remember, I was actually hired by Peter McGrath. So another, longtime Maximo guy who's no longer with us, but so that goes way back, yes. Support. So I've talked to customers about, how to run the system from back in the 3X days. That was when I started answering the phone. And then I moved over into development and started doing some design work and worked on some of the purchasing applications and contracts, and then went through the whole acquisition. I went through lots of rebranding, worked in strategy for quite a while, focused, I've been liaison for the facilities user group, so met a lot of customers through those use cases, which also sort of led to some of the Tririga work and bringing that into the portfolio to help address some of those use cases. And now continue to work on just, Maximo core and responsible for life cycle and working with customers and making sure we're, communicating out the roadmap and what our plans are as we go through this journey now towards the next chapter of, the 8X and the suite.
Yeah, and you had that supply chain background too, which is interesting. A lot of detailed functionality, so awesome. And what's one odd fact that people may not know?
I was struggling with this, trying to come up with something, but so I don't know. I just went back to the travel, and so I always find that it's kind of interesting. I think I've gotten to travel a lot through my work, and have gone worldwide, right? Australia 5 times, etc. But if you go back, I never got on a plane until I was 24 years old, and so it came very late. And then
so 2 years ago, 2 years ago, you got on a plane.
But my first international, the reason I had to get my passport was a trip to Abu Dhabi. So of all the places in the world, you want your first international experience to be, I'm in the desert in the Middle East, right? So
yeah, right.
We're the Maximo customer.
That's great, Kim. Thanks. Dave, let's hear a little bit about your background.
Yeah, excellent. So welcome, everyone. Yeah, so I'm Dave Gastier, and Kim and I have worked together for, I hate to say it, over 20 years now, working on Maximo. So I joined, similar to Kim, back when we were PSDI, MRO, and now IBM for many years. I was in the development area, focusing on designing the product. I worked with, hopefully, some of you on the phone over those time periods. And for the past few years, been focused more on the, product pricing strategy, supporting sales, presenting roadmaps, of course, and where we're taking the product. So really looking forward to today's discussion.
And your odd fact about you?
Something I've got a couple, but I think one that's really appropriate for this pandemic time is I really like to do DIY projects, so do-it-yourself projects. And I recently took on renovating a bathroom. So gutted the bathroom, put in a new floor, never did a floor before, put in a floor, did all that plumbing, put in wainscoting, all that stuff. So I was pretty proud of that. It was a good project. And
well, I may need you. So that's good to know that when you retire, I know a contractor to call, unless there was leaks. I'm not sure. If there was leaks, I don't want to deal with it. All right, that's great. You guys are awesome from that perspective, and I want the audience to know, again, what you've got in these two are people who are knowledgeable about the solution, who have grown up listening to customers, hundreds and hundreds of customers of all different sizes. I can remember bringing you the smallest of customers, like someone like Tito's, and having discussions to the largest discussions like Boeing and ADM and all these other customers that are out there. So again, my name's Ray Michek. I'm with Iot Solutions. I've been around Maximo since 1997. Joined when it was PSDI, then it turned into MRO Software, stayed for 9 years till IBM purchased Maximo, and I stayed another, how many years? In 2006, stayed till 2012, and then started with Iot in 2012, and have been there ever since, all around Maximo, which is exciting. The community is awesome. An odd fact that someone might not know about me is I drive a 2003 Saab Aero wagon that has 237,000 miles on it. I believe in asset maintenance and reliability to make those assets last. And I wish I would have used Maximo to track all that, because I might have sold the car at some point, because I would have done a report going, oh, wait a second, that's too many. I spent too much more on it. Okay, so let's get into the session, but I would like to do one more poll to help level set it for Dave and Kim. So next slide, Rachel. Oh, I got to tell about us. Oh, go back to that slide, because I do have to say that one commercial. Hey, Iot Solutions been around since 2006. We're in all different industries. We've got a great group of customers that we deal with, and we're very proud of our most recent Maximo World Award that we won with the Encore Hotel up there in your neck of the woods, Dave and Kim. If you get a chance to see it, it's an unbelievable resort, and they're using Maximo in some really, really cool ways. You'll learn more about that at Maximo World as well. So, okay, now the next slide. Let's just level set for Dave and Kim, if you will. And we're going to do a poll, and I'd like you to let us know, what release of Maximo are you currently on? Are you on 7.6.1, 7.6.2, 7.6.0, which could be trouble, 7.5, or earlier than 7.5? If you could fill that out. Rachel, this is where we need the music right here. But
that's a lot of moving parts.
That's a lot of moving parts. So we'll let people take the poll. We'll give them another 30 seconds. All right, what do we have there, Rachel?
All right, closing.
Oh, look at that.
Good. That's good.
A good mix, yeah. Right? So people are primed. Yeah. And I think 7.6.1 was an awesome release, really steady, and had some good functionality. And 2 is a great next step. So that's great. All right, good. So that gives you a little bit of an idea, Dave and Kim, about where people are at.
That's excellent.
Okay, so Rachel, pull up the the announcement slide that you have to do. Dave, I'm going to turn it over to you for a little bit and let you go through some slides.
Okay, definitely. Let's go to the first slide. And that was a good segue to what we're going to cover today. As we kind of talked at the beginning here, we've got a number of areas we'll go through. So, why don't we just jump into it rather than going through the topics? So first slide. Next slide. Yeah, there we go. Application Suite. That's our focus today, right? So what is it all about? Where are we taking Maximo as a whole? From the Maximo brand perspective, I think hopefully most of you realize we've expanded the brand over the last few years, adding a number of Maximo branded offerings. And so the suite is really where we start to bring these all together. And if we look at the next slide, it's supported by what we call the IBM product journey. So if we look at manage in the lower left-hand corner, think of that as our entire Maximo EAM portfolio. So all the industry solutions and all the add-on capability, all focused around enterprise asset management. So the things that most of you have been using for probably many years. It really becomes the anchor for the application suite as we kind of move forward. Then we kind of look up next to the monitoring capability. We had launched something called the Iot Platform a number of years ago. And this monitoring really takes it more to an application level, where it includes the ability to connect to devices that might be attached to the assets or equipment that you're maintaining, being able to identify alerts or anomalies, but it also comes with dashboarding and some other capabilities to help determine what those alerts might be driven from. So really, the ability to connect to the devices on the assets. Above that is a new capability, what was Maximo Visual Inspections. It's another way to kind of do anomaly detection by reviewing or analyzing photographs or videos. Came out of mainly the manufacturing environments where they were using it to make sure the quality of the output of what's being manufactured met the requirements. But we're finding there's use cases in many other industries as well. So that starts to expand from, again, anomaly detection. So we kind of move up this journey or this path as you're collecting information from the devices on the assets. You're gathering information through Manage and EAM, whether it's work and asset history. We start to build out enough content to support health. And when we look at health, this is what we originally had launched as the Maximal Asset Health Insights. So it's the health of the assets, which enables you to be able to really measure and score the health of assets based on variable conditions that you can define. Allows you to make decisions around improved maintenance, perhaps modifying your PM schedule, or planning for replacement. So that's really where the reliability engineer begins to come into play. The next phase up is the predict. So as you get more and more data, it's kind of all this electronic data coming from different sources. The suite will also include the predictive maintenance solution. So that's what the predict is, which will allow you to then begin to move, at least for selective assets, from planned and preventive maintenance to predictive maintenance based on the data that's being collected. So this is kind of the journey. The piece I didn't really talk about is mobile. Throughout this whole process, mobile is a key aspect of where we see more and more applications being accessed through mobile devices. So we've got a whole big focus around mobile and improved mobile capabilities, including not just being able to use mobile with Manage, but some other areas that will introduce the use of AI, artificial intelligence, as well as support for things like remote assistance using things like augmented reality. So if we go to the next slide, those are all the different components that we'll include. This is a different picture of it that kind of gives you the concept of what the application suite is all about. As we kind of just took you through that journey, I mentioned how we have all these different offerings. Of course, Manage on the left is the entire Maximal EAM portfolio. You can see we kind of call out some of the industry solutions that are included, of course, along with all our add-ons that we have, all the capabilities within Maximo as well. And then we've got all those other offerings, right? So the key here is that they're all part of the application suite. You would be entitled to use all of these because you're buying the suite, not the individual products. And one of the questions we get, I think this might be one of the questions, Ray, that we have afterwards, but I'll mention it here as well, is that although you're entitled to use all these capabilities, you do not have to install all of this. If you only need Manage, you can install just Manage. But the nice thing is if you want to start to try out things like Monitor or Health, you don't have to make a separate purchase. It's part of the application suite entitlement, and you can start to try it. So that's kind of the concept here.
Yeah, it's really exciting because it's a departure from the way Maximo has been kind of purchased and designed in the past, which again, was in its kind of swim lane, if you will. And then it's really now the swim lane of maintenance. What's the information you need to do your job, and how do you bring that into one place? And people can select where they want to go. I think that's a great point, Dave.
Exactly. And anyone who's been around Maximo for a while, in our typical presentations, we had what we call the chicklet slide, which were all the different industry solutions, the add-ons, the core. Each and one of those came with different licensing metrics, different licensing models, and required different purchases. If you didn't purchase it up front, right, you'd have to go back and if you wanted to try something, you'd have to buy it. So we believe this is really a nice way to start to deploy and deliver the capabilities. Now, if we look at the next slide, we'll keep this moving, so we'll get to the questions. The next slide, there's also some changes we're making, not just from a capabilities perspective, like I just took us through, but also in how the application suite will be deployed. So there'll be some technology changes as well. A big focus for IBM as a whole is around what we call hybrid cloud. And part of that is how all applications will be delivered. So for us, that means that Maximo and all of the applications in the suite will be containerized. So we're moving to containers. Hopefully some of you have heard about things like Docker and Kubernetes, but it's a way to containerize and deploy applications. So within the suite, it's all going to be containerized. In order to manage those deployments of the containers and the administration of the environment, we will leverage something called Red Hat OpenShift as the deployment technology, which is included as part of the suite. So this is one big package. It allows these containers to be managed, deployed, a lot of nice technical capabilities from an administrative perspective that come along with OpenShift. So that's going to be a key part. And then, as you notice down the bottom here, it will enable customers to be able to more easily select and deploy or decide where they want to deploy and run their instance of Maximal. So it could be on public clouds such as AWS or Azure or Google Cloud. Could be your own private on-premise installation. So that's one of the questions we get frequently is, oh, does it mean it's a cloud-only offering? And the answer is no. You can put it on your own on-premise environment. So kind of consider that your private cloud. And of course, from an IBM perspective, we'll make it available on the IBM cloud as a managed service. So some functional capabilities coming together, but also from a technology perspective, some changes on how it is deployed. Next slide. So along with that, so when we looked at how we've sold Maximo in the past, it was, as I mentioned, it was pretty complex because depending on the combinations of products you wanted and whether those were industry solutions, various add-ons within Manage or Maximo EAM, it was lots of different licensing and different metrics that we used to do that. So we looked at the suite and we wanted to really simplify the licensing model itself. And so a couple of years ago, we had introduced the concept of token-based licensing as we launched the Maximo Application Suite. This is basically that same concept. We'll call them app points or application points rather than tokens, but the concept is similar, that you'd acquire the application suite as a single product, a single part, that would entitle you to purchase a number of application points based on how you're going to use or in which products you're going to use within the suite. But it's a single product and it's a single pool of application points. So it's a much more flexible model from a consumption perspective. Think of it more as a concurrent use model. As users are logging in and out of the application suite, they will kind of check out application points. As they log out, those points go back in the pool and other users will be available for other users to use them. So again, much more simplified on how users will be able to get in and out and what they'll be able to access in the system. A couple other things I just want to point out, and this is a question we often get too. When we sell the application suite, we'll continue to sell it using perpetual licenses. So most of you probably today have purchased Maximo with a perpetual license. but it will also be offered using what we call a subscription term license for those of you that might be interested in just buying it for a period of time, perhaps to try some of the other capabilities. Next slide. There's only a couple more, and then we'll get on to the questions. This is another way to look at how the application points are consumed. We really tried to simplify the types of users that get defined within the suite itself. So if we kind of start with the limited concurrent user, it's the entry point for users that will have access to three modules within the suite, within Manage, I should say. So that's kind of what we have today with our limited use user. You'll notice we did make some changes. We've eliminated some add-ons and just made them part of the core product. So things like linear assets and calibration capability just are there always. There's nothing separate that needs to be purchased. Spatial, we eliminated the user license for the spatial piece. There's still an install kind of an app points required for that. But from a limited perspective, it gives you access to, again, 3 modules and all the applications in there. Although we broke out mobile as a separate box, we don't care if a user is accessing Manage through a mobile device or through their desktop. It's still just a limited use user. There's no doubling up of app points, 5 app points for them, and they can use either one. You'll notice that because we're adding in other capabilities into this suite, a limited use user could use Monitor, go to the Monitor dashboards and see what alerts might be coming off of the devices associated to assets. And then as we kind of move up the stack, base concurrent user is at 10 app points. So whenever they log in, it consumes 10 application points. Think of this as what today we would call a full use authorized user in today's Maximo. And again, we show that we've got the add-ons linear calibrations. At this point, if the user is a scheduler or planner, scheduler is included. That's not a separate add-on, but you'd be considered a base user if you're using the scheduling capabilities. And at this point, you could also use health. So that's the Asset Health Insights capability as well. And of course, anything below them that have access to mobile, they could use Monitor. And then the top level is the premium user. And think of this from a managed perspective. Any of our industry solutions, today we have industry solutions full authorized licenses, and that's really what this is intended to cover, those full use users of an industry. Now, with this model, you can have access to 1 or more industry solutions, and it's the same 15 application points. So there's no concept of add-on to an industry solution license. And you see at this level, we also get access to the predictive maintenance capability, as well as that visual inspection functionality that we talked about as well. So really tried to condense this. The other thing I guess I should note is that there's no separate limited use license for an industry solution, which is nice. So if you have an industry solution installed and you have some full use premium users, your limited use users don't need anything extra. This same 5 app points would give them access to the 3 modules, and it could include industry solution functionality. So that's that.
Yeah, and Dave, I think when you look at it, you go, people are probably still wrapping their head around it and go, well, points and how many points do I need? And it does take some time, but what IBM and you guys have done from the operating management team has always done a good job of trying to right size the license. So the goal is to get the right license for the right person that's accessing the system. And this is really pretty close to almost the I don't want to say the perfect scenario, because there's always flaws, right? But it does allow you to really map your users and not worry about some of the kind of compliance things in the past. So it's an interesting model to approach it.
That's correct. And we've got some tooling to help, with any customer to determine, how many application points they might need. So we map kind of what they have today and number of users to this new concurrent model with the app. Right. So yeah. Next slide. Oh, did you have something?
That's okay.
Tim?
Go ahead.
Next slide.
Next slide. Okay. So there's a quick summary. So just this and one more slide. So from a roadmap perspective, and again, this is very high level, we introduced the initial Maximo Application Suite, came out at the end of May or early June there. Yeah, end of June was when it GA'd. And that was, the suite itself with the monitoring capability. It did include an entitlement to Maximo 761. So that is still there right now. We had, as you can see, we're trying to have quarterly updates as a way to kind of ramp this up and get it out and make it complete. So we had an update at the end of August and another update in October. And then our most recent update, the 8.3, Maximo Application Suite 8.3, was released at the end of January. I think most important for this group that's on this call is manage. So all the Maximo EAM portfolio of offerings will be in the next update, which we're targeting to the end of April. So April 29th, I believe, is the current date. And although we don't have a number on it, you can kind of guess what comes after 8.3 will be the Application Suite 8.4. I'll share that with everybody. And it would be an 8.0 version of Manage within the suite. So, and then from there, we plan to have quarterly updates at the suite level. That doesn't mean that everything within every functional capability within the suite is updated, but we'll have some updates along the way. So you can see there's another one planned for July, and you can anticipate one for October and so on down the road. So we will still continue to have within Manage, we're working to come up with more details around the functional enhancements that we'll make within Manage. I can share with you that we have a big focus on what we're calling modernization. So really trying to make further improvements to the user interface and some of the applications that you'll be able to access and manage Maximo functionality with, along with big focus on mobility. And so at some point, Ray, we may want to do a separate session on that. So.
Yeah, right. Yep. And so again, it's released in April for the Maximo piece of it, the Manage piece. It is a journey. By attending this, you're getting ahead of the curve. So you're understanding what the components are that you're going to be taking a look at. So there's not this huge rush that, oh, you got to move on. I think that's one of the questions that came up. All right. So next slide, I think.
And
go ahead.
Well, I'll just mention one more thing, Ray. So what we have seen is some customers who have been interested in whether it's Monitor or Health or Predict, those seem to be the ones that we've seen the most interest in. We do have customers who have moved up to the Application Suite, which allows them to continue at this point to use 761 for EAM, so no upgrade there, but also then get access to some of that other functionality. So it's something we kind of call that the coexistence play, to kind of have both running. So one more slide, and then we'll be ready for questions. So this is this kind of, I think, will help with some of the questions that the attendees may have. So what does this mean? So we are in the process of working through what an upgrade is going to look like for our Maximo EAM clients to move up to the suite. We believe the point that you'd upgrade from will be the 761X, and whether it's 761.2 or 763, whatever at the time, you'll move from that. So 761 is the foundation. So that's why when you polled the audience, it was good to see that most customers were up on the 761, at least the 761 level. Questions we get from a database perspective. I mentioned we're making some technology changes, but we will continue to support Oracle, Microsoft SQL Server, DB2 as your database. So that will continue to do. From an application perspective, we are not rewriting Maximo itself. So but we are delivering it as part of the application suite. So a lot of the administrative capabilities over time will be moving up to that layer of the application suite, things like the authentication and the user repository. So where users are defined will be at a higher level. And then I mentioned the infrastructure is changing. So how Maximo will be deployed through the Red Hat OpenShift and the containerization of Maximo. So there are new things that any of you technical or administrative people are going to have to learn around what that means, the concept. You can see the next technology migrations, things called operators, on how the product is actually installed and deployed. Security and user management will move a little bit up to the application suite layer. I noticed in some of the questions, Ray, we had questions about app servers. So some big changes here. This offering will only be supported using the WebSphere Liberty, so WAS Liberty as the application server. Integration, and we'll have much more detail on the upgrade, but this is some of the highlights. Integration is changing with the use of REST APIs replacing RMI, so that's something that a lot of customers need to be aware of. And we'll use something called Kafka for the message queue. If someone wanted to use continuous JMS MQ, they'd have to bring your own license to do that. So that would still be supported, but not delivered. I mentioned some of the big areas we're focused on: modernization of the user experience. Some of this we started a couple of years ago with the new introduction of the persona-based work centers. We're actually investing quite a bit to improve that. Some of the big gaps we had were around configuration or lack of configuration tooling, as well as support for offline capabilities. So that's why we see these mobile and the modern UI coming together. And then I think that's probably it for now. So again, more to come with the upgrade. We just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of a flavor for what to expect.
And it's good stuff too. We'll get the slides out to people because they probably are seeing some things on here like Kafka and some of the other things for the first time. And again, the goal is to slowly introduce you to these concepts so that you can investigate what's the best path forward for your organization. We'll get the slides out to you along with the recording so you can hear Dave talk about it again as well. So let's do one more poll, Rachel, and then we'll get into some of the questions here while I queue those up. On a scale of 1 to 5, rank the priority of an IoT implementation to your business today. And the reason why we're doing this is Dave talked about the journey. Manage is kind of that core piece, but all those other pieces are really IoT related. If you guys could put that in and see where everybody sits, and then that kind of sets the foundation for some of these other questions. Another 15 seconds, Rachel, and then we'll move on. All right, what do we have? Okay, so again, I kind of weighted in that middle range there, and again, a lot are still working on their Maximo side of the business, Dave, so we talk about that. Okay, let's go over the questions. You can just bring up the question slide, and then I'll read some of the questions. Again, fail-safe method, Kim, paper always works. These are questions that have come in.
Get my Crazy 8 ready.
Get your AI tool, your knowledge center ready. All right, first question came from someone that said, is there a timeline for customer adoption when 761 will be forced to move to the application suite? Kim, you want to take that one?
Yeah, my sources say no, but
okay.
Right now, so we just announced the end of support for 760. So that's one thing if people should think about moving up to 761. But the timeline, so it would be at the end of support of that life cycle. So we have a 5+3 life cycle. 761 wouldn't be, right now the conversation is to not end of support before 2025. So the timeline is about another, 4 years, and then if there's extended support beyond that.
All right, good. Hopefully we'll all still be there. Talking about Maximo, Dave. All right. Next question is, and I think you answered this in part of your discussion there. And by the way, please put questions in the chat. We're getting a couple coming in now. Can I move to the new mass licensing model now, even though I'm currently on an older version of Maximo? And by older, I'm hoping they're thinking 761 is really probably the right place. But can I move to the new mass licensing model now?
Yeah, so that was kind of what I mentioned when we looked at the roadmap. you can do it right now. If there's different ways to do it, I guess. You could move everything to the mass contract, and you'd be entitled at that point for 761. So running Maximo as you have it today, outside of the containers, you don't need all the Red Hat OpenShift to run it, but it would give you the entitlement to use some of the to start to try some of the other functionality with it included in the suite. So yes, you can do that now.
Okay.
You know, the other option is you just buy enough app points for the, you don't change your existing contract. If you're on SNS, you can continue to pay that for Maximo, and then you just buy app points to try some of the new capabilities. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Next question is, do we need to convert to our current perpetual licenses to move to mass? I think you also answered that, and I think they don't.
Kim, do you want to touch on
Well,
that
it is
one?
a new part number. So when you do move to the 8 version, you will have to convert your current license to a new perpetual license if you want to stay on perpetual. But these are new part numbers. It's a single part number that is at points that gives you access to all of the things that we've talked about today.
So they could stay perpetual, I think was the gist of the question.
Yes.
Or they
Right.
can move to the subscription model, which is interesting. For some companies, they may want to operationalize the cost there. Okay. Next question is, do I have to, and Dave, you answered this, do I have to install all the applications in the suite? And you answered that no, right? You don't have to.
Yeah, I mean, we get that question quite a bit every time we give this presentation, right? Because people see, oh, I don't need all that stuff. Why, you know? And the answer is no. You just install what you need. You only need to purchase app points for what you're using, right? You don't need to buy this massive extra amount unless you plan to start to, you know, use some of the other capabilities. But yeah, just install what you need.
Okay, good. Next question, and you answered this as well. You did a good job, Dave. You handled a lot of this. Can I use my Oracle database in the suite, or is it DB2 only?
Yeah, so I mentioned that as we went kind of through that upgrade considerations, and we'll continue to support Oracle SQL Server and DB2.
Okay.
Yep.
Kim, I've got 2 questions. I know you've talked about this a little bit. I'm going to combine them together. So it's, do I have to allocate points one by one to users, or will there be an automated way to assign or map points to user profiles? That's one question. The second part is, would users be kicked out of or restricted if there aren't enough points available?
Yeah, some of the mass updates might come in the next release, but yeah, we understand that you need to be able to assign blocks of people and have security groups that have certain profiles that have a certain number of points. But as far as the monitoring goes, there are ways that you can set the system to either disallow people logging in if you're out of points, or to just warn. So we know that there are certain customers that, you know, depend on getting access, and that we will monitor if there's overages, but it won't stop you from logging in.
Yeah, I've seen the monitoring tool. It looks really good. Every year it's kind of gotten better. I know there are some challenges early on, but each release of that, and it sounds like it's going to be really good there. And that customers have.
Yeah, just to add to that, Ray. So you were thinking maybe of the monitoring within what we'd call manage. This metering is going to be at the mass level.
The whole side.
Yeah. So yeah. So that's the hard part to get our head around, is you're logging into the suite even if you're ending up in manage. So everything's at the suite level.
Good point. Thank you, Dave, for the clarification. All right, here's one. This one, I'm not sure who wants to get this one. I've heard that to upgrade to this new release, there'll be an upgrade charge. Can you elaborate?
No, we can elaborate. Yeah, the answer is yes. As Kim mentioned, this is a new part. There is a upgrade part or a trade-up part, depending on whether you're going with perpetual or with subscription-based. With that said, as I mentioned, there is some right sizing that goes along with it because this is concurrent use. But yeah, you're getting a lot of additional value with some of the other capabilities that you may use down the road. But with that said, as I mentioned, there is some right sizing that goes along with this that we can help with this, how many application points you really need.
And as part of that, there's also the entitlement to the OpenShift technology and to some other cloud packs for data that have, Watson AI and machine learning tools, the DB2 warehouse. So there's a lot that comes in the bundle that justifies a cost.
Yeah, and someone else kind of had a follow-up question on that, was regarding, how much would it cost? But I think that's an individual case based on what you're using, what you currently have entitled now, and what functionality you're going to use in the future. So each of those discussions are probably some different in the past, right? Where you just upgraded and you were worried about technical or functional concerns here. Here it's usage, not concerns, but issues that you want to address, where you may be able to take advantage of deploying the product out to a lot more people or less people, depending on, like you said, the concurrent model. So those are individual questions that probably need to be addressed by their Maximo account rep or their valued business partner, I think, is going through it.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yep.
Next question. What functional and UI changes are being made to Maximo Classic and current work centers in Mass? Following up to that question is, does the new Maximo Mobile replace work centers, or will they be available if we don't need a disconnected mobile? And then what about Maximo Every Place? So that was a big
a lot of stuff going on there.
But basically, I think it was around UI, right? What's the UI is going to be changing?
Yeah, we actually have a good story, I think, around where we're going. Now, we did launch those work centers a couple of years ago, and I think everyone realizes that it was a good concept, but it lacked a true framework or platform like we had for classic Maximal, right? So things like if you wanted to configure or extend one, it was all manual code. There was no way to upgrade it, right? Didn't support things like offline capabilities. So we're in the process of developing a new persona-based work center framework that will be used for both desktop persona-based applications as well as mobile applications. And as part of that, a big focus is around how can we deliver something like an application designer for these work centers, or for these new applications. So a kind of a graphical tool that will be used to kind of do the configuration and to make sure that it will support both mobile applications as well as connected applications. So that's kind of from that modernization perspective. The other thing we're doing is, as part of a suite, we want to make sure that all the offerings within the suite have a consistent look and feel. So IBM has some design patterns that we use that we'll be leveraging, so that whether you're going into manage or whether you're in monitor or help, it all has a similar look and feel and navigation pattern. So for those of you familiar with Maximo, it's a little more than a CSS change. We are going to change that kind of CSS to the classic Maximo applications, but we're also going to be modifying some of how the navigation works so that it aligns better with being able to navigate out to other offerings within the suite.
Okay. I guess the other thing to add, there is going to be some transition time, right? This isn't going to be all happening with this first release of 8.0 or in 8.4. So we'll have some of the Maximo Mobile disconnected, connected applications available, but we'll still support the anywhere mobile applications as well as the work centers until everything can be transitioned to that newer technology. So there'll be some coexistence for a little while.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm gonna have, with just a few minutes left, gonna get some rapid fire questions here. I'm gonna combine this next one, which is basically people like automation scripts. Is that gonna still be available to be used? And will it migrate to the new release? And you could throw BERT reports and integrations, which you touched on a little bit, Dave. So
my sources say yes.
Okay.
Yes, they will.
Okay.
Of course. Yeah,
migration. Hey, mine said yes too, Kim. As I see it, yeah. So automation scripts will continue to be available and continue to move forward, right? As I mentioned, we're not rewriting the Maximo managed components, right? Classic Maximo at this time. BERT will still be the embedded report writing tool One thing I didn't mention is that support for Cognos it won't be available initially. We're hoping that in the future we'll be able to include that as part of the suite, but right now in the April release it won't be there.
Okay, good. A quick question. This is an odd one, but it's interesting. Where or how does IBM Control Desk fit into Mass 8?
I'll let Kim take this one.
Yeah, we've been working closely with them. So at the moment, there are ways to connect other external third-party tools the way we can today, right? Through the integration, it's a shared database. So we're working through what their licensing might look like. Stay tuned, I would say, is the best. Yeah, well, yeah. Concentrate hard and get back to me later.
Okay.
Yeah.
A few IBM Control Desk users out there that kind of wish that path would have stayed the same, and they kind of diverged for a little bit. So that might be someone we want to get back on the line and have.
Yes, we're working that one. Yep.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, well, we too late to do the poll. We were going to do a poll on Red Hat. Let's do it real quick. Go to the poll real quick on Red Hat, Rachel. Just got a minute to do this. What is your organization's familiarity with Red Hat and containers? You may go, what is Red Hat? Heard of it, not sure what it does, heard of it, in use at our organization, or heavily in use at our organization. If you could take just 10 seconds to fill that out, and then I think we got just a couple more questions. All right, let's see what we got, Rachel. Okay, so still some education, Kim and Dave, on what Red Hat does and how it's going to apply. We can talk a little bit about that. Hey, Rachel, do we have any other ones that are coming into the chat? I thought I saw something on mobile. What do you have there?
Yeah. So let's see. Looks like a couple people are joining us from the Maximo mobile webinar. There are a couple questions. Can I use the new Maximo mobile with my current version of Maximo 761?
All right. Bring us back to the video screen if you can too.
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
We are making the new Maximo mobile. Primarily, there's a technician application and the support for offline inspections available. Does mean you have to buy enough app points to cover mobile. So at least a portion of that would application points to cover the mobile piece. But we're making it so that it can be installed with your existing Maximo 761.2, just to be clear. It does not require installation of all the Red Hat, and it doesn't mean you containerize Maximo. So.
Oh, that's great news. I think that based on what I've seen too, the solution, it's really got some usability, kind of neat features that will make it a good play for current customers. Any more, Rachel?
I'd say we got time for one more. Is Anywhere just called Maximo Mobile now?
There will be a coexistence. I think our mobile offering will transition to be called Maximo Mobile more as a branding change, but the 9 Anywhere applications as you know them today will coexist for some amount of time.
Yeah, I think it's important to note last year when we updated Anywhere with the 764 release, where we eliminated the mobile first server, that really became the foundation for what we're developing as Maximo Mobile. So we're using that same, Cordova container as a way to launch the mobile applications. But as Kim mentioned, over time we will be updating the existing Anywhere apps, which will run in that same architecture, but they'll be updated to the Maximo Mobile application technology.
Yeah, and again, I think it looks really good. Anywhere looks really good. We've had favorable response from our customers who are really taking to it, and that ease of installation has just been huge, man. It's great. So, all right, that's all the time we have. Dave and Kim, thank you for joining us. The goal of this was to give you some insight and get you updated. Again, wanted you to learn about the potential path forward, and it's not a huge rush. You can plan it out and go forward with it. Compare the new licensing model, points versus perpetual and concurrent and user-based pricing. There's some options and flexibilities there that you didn't have before. And then the final one was understand the new technology and brief you. Now there'll be some time to understand Red Hat and some of the containers and those types of things. but now you have at least a briefing on that. So again, Dave and Kim, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for putting together.
Yeah, no, not a problem. One last
Yeah, it was
slide there. Go ahead.
It was our pleasure. The only thing I wanted to kind of promote too is we get closer to the launch in April. There'll be more and more, webinars. So everyone just stay tuned for those. You mentioned the one at the end of March 24th. I think we've got one lined up, but we'll have others, and I'm sure we'll have some around the technology and some around upgrades.
Maybe we'll get to see you in person in August, right?
That would be great. I hope so. And
yeah,
look, the one in March isn't going to be as fun as this one, but it will be of good content. So David, Kim, if you guys are leading that, I know there'll be a lot of good content. All right, everyone, that concludes the session for today. Thank you so much for joining. Again, we shout out to the Project Tech More team, Dave and Kim. As always, it's great catching up with you. Talk to you soon, everyone.
Pleasure.
Take care.
Thank you. Yep. Bye-bye.